La mer est à l'origine de la vie. À la contempler, on éprouve un sentiment d'harmonie. Elle réveille en nous le sens du divin. Imaginez à présent que vous êtes un dauphin, libre de vivre au gré de vos besoins. Il y a un dauphin qui dort en chacun de nous.
Il y a une espèce de résonance, si vous voulez, entre le dauphin et l'homme. Le dauphin, lui, n'est pas un poisson. Lorsqu'il va sous l'eau, il fait comme vous et moi, il fait de l'apnée, il retient son souffle, il respire, fait une inspiration avant de pénétrer le milieu marin et retient son souffle.
La première fois que j'ai vu des dauphins, c'était en mer Rouge. J'avais 7 ans. Avec mon frère, nous étions sur le pont inférieur d'un paquebot qui reliait la Chine à la France. Mon cœur s'est mis à battre très fort. J'étais ému, curieux, captivé. J'aurais voulu en toucher un. Je suis né à Shanghai en 1927. Mon père était architecte pour la municipalité française de la ville. L'été, nous séjournions souvent au Japon en famille. Mon frère et moi passions nos journées à jouer dans l'eau avec une bande de gamins. La plupart de nos compagnons de jeu étaient les enfants des hamas, des femmes de la mer en japonais. Les hamas perpétuent une tradition plusieurs fois millénaire. Elles plongent en apnée pour ramasser les huîtres et les coquillages au fond de l'eau. Je rêvais de vivre sur une plage des tropiques, sur une île nue, plongeant de l'aube au crépuscule dans les eaux cristallines. Mon père a fini par se résoudre à cette obsession. Je n'avais que la mer en tête. Un matin de printemps 1948, je suis parti sac au dos. Pendant 5 ans, j'ai vu du pays, comme on dit. Maroc, Danemark, Suède, Canada. Ayant satisfait en partie mon besoin d'aventure et de voyage, il était temps pour moi de devenir sérieux. Alors j'ai épousé une femme merveilleuse, une Danoise, et nous avons emménagé en Floride, à Miami.
When I think of Papa, I think of him wearing a Speedo, a black Speedo. I never saw him wear blue jeans. I never saw him wear a suit, always in a bathing suit. Papa went down to Miami to do an interview at the Seaquarium, and they offered him a job. I remember going to the Seaquarium to see him and looking through those large panes of glass in the tank and watching him go around and feed all the critters inside, you know, the big fish, the groupers and the turtles. He had on the hard helmet and he had these heavy boots, so he walked like some creature from the Black Lagoon, you know. I was about 8.
J'avais fait toutes sortes de métiers. Mais sans le savoir, je m'apprêtais à franchir une étape décisive qui allait bousculer le cours de mon existence. Ce jour-là, de 1957, au Seaquarium de Miami, j'ai vu Clown pour la première fois. Et elle m'a reconnu. On aurait dit qu'on se connaissait depuis toujours.
Clown was one of the main dolphins because he was so smart. He did most of the demanding tricks, and you could teach her almost anything. Everybody loved Clown. Jacques loved Clown. I loved Clown. There wasn't anybody who ever knew that dolphin that didn't love her. Of all the dolphins, he was the one that seemed almost human.
I sincerely believe that man is somehow related to the diving mammals, who, like us, are warm-blooded and who have to hold their breath to go underwater. If you're afraid of them, they will feel it and they will understand it. And if you're not afraid and you show them confidence, they will understand it too. There is somehow a connection, you see.
Jacques had a certain ability in the water that the dolphins were intrigued by. He was different than most people. He could hold his breath longer, he could dive deeper. He was relaxed. They can sense the heartbeat. They can sense a person's temperament in the water. And so, yes, Jacques did have a certain calling. I think the dolphins were fascinated by Jacques' ability in the water.
Les physiologistes avaient abondamment prévenu les plongeurs des risques encourus au-delà du mur des 50 mètres. Passé ce point, disait-il, c'était la mort certaine, ou presque. Aussi, aucun athlète n'avait tenté de le dépasser. Aucun, sauf Enzo Maiorca. Enzo était bien connu des pêcheurs sous-marins de Sicile pour la durée de ses apnées. Il était capable d'atteindre de grandes profondeurs pour les aider à récupérer les poissons. Ce jeune Sicilien, tout en pudeur et en modestie, doté d'un thorax de gladiateur, régnait en maître absolu sur les profondeurs depuis de nombreuses années. La nouvelle du record du monde établi par l'Italien a rapidement fait le tour du monde. Mais il avait un nouveau concurrent, encore inconnu dans la discipline. Moi.
It wasn't until I moved to the Bahamas that Jacques came over and asked me to be his coach for a world record 200 feet. It took quite a few people to be involved in a world record attempt because it's dangerous, it's going deep, and there's other people involved like the divers who are on the bottom, building up bottom time. Very dangerous for them.
Le jour de ma tentative de record à 60 mètres, j'étais suspendu dans le temps et l'espace. Plus rien n'existait pour moi que mon but. J'ai plongé dans l'abysse.
Quando vai sott'acqua, le sensazioni che ti accompagnano in un mondo normale scompaiono. Il tuo corpo assume un peso diverso, una dimensione diversa. Hai il cuore che batte pianissimo, 12, 13 battiti al minuto. Hai il peso, la forza gravitazionale che insiste su di te in modo diverso. A 150 metri hai 16 kg su ogni centimetro quadrato del tuo corpo. Hai i polmoni che sono un sedicesimo del volume iniziale. Il problema dell'apnea è la sincope, cioè quando il tuo corpo ha così poco ossigeno, lo tiene per il cuore e per il cervello, in quel momento lì svieni e se non c'è uno che ti aiuta a ritornare in superficie, muori.
So, guys, you go down for any reason. You don't equalize. Don't stay down, head up, pushing this, because after you break everything and you have blood in your saliva. When lungs are full of blood, you breathe, but oxygen is not coming. You feel that you're not breathing. Lung tissues are very, very fragile. And once you break them, after you have the problem. So if you have blood, stop. The guy, the American that died in Blue Hole last year, he was getting out with blood since 3-4 days. Blackout and blood, blackout and blood. To the day when he died, he went up to the surface and he droned. He droned in his lungs. This is lung squeeze, and it's bad. You try to breathe and you don't feel air, you don't feel oxygen getting in.
Fort Lauderdale, January 1968. After weeks of preparation, the moment of truth. Mayol dives into the deep waters of the Blue Gulf Stream, his speed 1 meter per second. The other divers and officials witness his perfectly controlled arrival on the disk at minus 70 meters.
My phone rang about 10 o'clock at night, and it was a TV station out of Hartford, Connecticut, calling to see if I'd been watching the news. And I had been watching the news. And Jacques had gone to 230 feet. When Jacques hit the surface from that 230-foot dive, he was unconscious. They scooped him up and got him breathing again, and he was okay. Of course, the news guy says to me, you're going to go back and break his record now. And without thinking, of course without thinking, I said yes. Next thing you know, he's on the air saying, I just talked with Bob Croft, and he said he's going to go back and break the Frenchman's record. And I thought, what did I just do to myself? The night before I was going for my record, I was drinking a little bit of scotch and smoking a cigar, and about 1 o'clock in the morning, Jacques came in, knocked on the door, he came in, and he was flabbergasted, he was dumbfounded, telling me with his French accent, you should be sleeping. You should be in bed resting, getting ready for tomorrow. Tomorrow is your big day. You should not be smoking. You should not be drinking scotch, Jacques, I think, was much more disciplined than me. He would practice yoga. He would do the yoga breathing. He would stand on his head with his arms for 25, 30 minutes sometimes. And he would go into almost a trance-like state on occasion.
Inhale through the nose and exhale through the nose. When exhale, the sound will become humming bee sound. I will demonstrate, then you practice. Inhale.
Traditionally, yoga means getting connected with the self and then going into kind of transcendence. Mayol came to this institution because there are many yoga techniques where we work with breathing. And these breathing techniques could be useful in his own profession of diving. I just tried to explain to him how these different techniques work, like Kapalbhati, fast breathing, then Uddiyana, a kind of cessation of breath. I will not say breath holding, because at the mental level we are still having the awareness of inhalation or exhalation.
Ce qui nous relie à la vie, c'est la respiration. En Occident, on la considère comme un simple processus physiologique. Dans la tradition orientale, c'est quelque chose de plus profond. Grâce à la respiration, on peut atteindre la fusion du corps et de l'esprit, l'intégration totale dans le milieu marin.
This picture was taken when we lived in Canada, in Edmonton, Alberta. It's my mother and my father. It was a love-hate relationship in a way. When they divorced in 1957, I was 7 years old. My brother would have been 3. Yeah. So Mama was alone with 2 little children. It had to be hard on her.
Freeport, Bahamas, within spitting distance of Cuba, where we meet a Frenchman, Jacques Mayol. He loves 3 things: the sea, women, and adventure. The adventure is satisfied by searching for gold in the rapids of California, or treasure on the wreck of a sunken galleon. The sea is always there, and the women.
After they divorced, he went first to Fort Lauderdale with some friends. They went treasure hunting. And then I think he went to the Turks and Caicos Islands to fish for lobster, because you could make quite a bit of good money there. He was quite a vagabond.
Che lui ha fatto di tutto, ha fatto perfino, ha avuto, girando, ha abbandonato la famiglia, ha fatto anche l'autista all'attrice a Hollywood, da ragazzo, a Zanzara, un'attrice famosa di quell'epoca. Ha fatto tutti i mestieri. Una 500, un Volkswagen con lettino sopra, la compagna giusta, possibilmente dopo si cambiava anche meglio, però era la sua vita, era il suo sogno. Il punto della terra non gli interessava quello che era. O il Giappone, o l'Africa, o la cosa, andava bene tutto.
En fait, c'était un vrai nomade, et c'était un nomade qui voyageait de façon un peu extraordinaire, avec rien. En fait, c'était assez étrange. Moi, je me souviens l'avoir voyagé avec lui à l'aéroport de Miami, avec son passeport d'une main, et puis une sangle avec une paire de palmes, un tuba et un masque de l'autre côté, et c'était tout. Il n'avait rien d'autre.
Era molto parco nelle sue... E noi, amici, lo accettavamo per quella che era. Ricordo quando veniva a Torino, a casa mia, si fermava un mese e mezzo in casa. A me non dava fastidio perché io lo trattavo come amico, era per me un idolo, era qualcosa di speciale. Però lui non partecipava mai a nessuna spesa, diciamo, monetaria.
Siamo sì diventati amici, però quando si lavora con Jacques, Jacques non esiste. Jacques è un'altra persona. Jacques entra nel... non lo so dove, comunque sembra un attore, ma non parlava della sua vita privata. Per lui era come un muro buio, è un buio, non si entrava.
During those years, we never heard from Papa. In fact, I didn't know if he was even dead or alive. One day I was at the library. I was reading a magazine. There was my father. He's alive. He's in Florida. I got the phone number, I called, and he was, of course, shocked but happy to hear from me. And he came to pick me up. We went on a Russian ship called the Litva to get acquainted. And the Litva was going into the Black Sea, so it was a 2-week cruise that I could be with my father. My big disappointment was that he was with a girlfriend, didn't tell me that she was coming. He had a German girlfriend, Gerda, that he had lived with in Florida, actually. I was very torn and very hurt, moody and pouting because I was like a little girl. I want my father's love and he's not giving me enough attention, that kind of thing. So I think in his mind, he still saw me as a little girl. He didn't understand things, the importance of certain things in the relationship and family. There was somehow some things eluded him. And I don't know if that was because he himself had left his family at a young age. In fact, he didn't go back to see his mother and father for like 18 years or something. He was gone.
Gerda, che era come lui di carattere, ideale per lei, che sicuramente aveva il solito carattere suo. Libero, gli piaceva gli animali, gli piaceva, lei era tutto contento in questa foresta dove stavano. Dalla costruzione della casa come la volevano, la macchina era sempre quella, il mangiare era quello. Tutto quello che andava bene a lui era uguale identico per lei. Gli è anche rimasto fregato. Al supermercato un drogato l'ha dato una coltellata che non conosceva.
He came where I was working one day and I went downstairs and he could barely talk. He was crying and told me the story about Gerda's death. She died in his arms. And after that, he never spoke again about Gerda.
E da quel momento lui ha cominciato a entrare in una depressione più profonda, perché in realtà Jacques Mayol è sempre stato un uomo solo.
どう特別な友情っていうか、ジャックが僕のことをやっぱり俺たちは言葉でコミュニケーションはなかなか取れないけれども、やっぱりそのイルカたちのようにテレパシーだって。勝山っていうところのマリーナでアルバイトをしてる時にマリーナの社長が「成田なんか変な外人が成田さんいますか?」って日本語で来てるぞ。誰？ってパッと言ったらそのジャック・マヨールなんですよ。でいろいろ話してるうちにジャックさんが泣き始めたんですよね。でその話聞くと僕もちょっとこう泣きたくなるんですけど、実はゲルダが死んだ。ピアノのそこにあったんですね。でピアノを弾き始めた。Music is my friend, music is my sweetheart. でもゲルダを失ったことは音楽では埋められない。 そういうことを言ってましたね。で僕のダイビングの大崎栄信という先生がいろいろ伊豆の伊東にある大光院ってお坊さんを紹介して、でそこでお坊さんからいろんなその精神的な日本の禅の精神的なことを教わりながらトレーニング。
Quand je vivais au temple, mon maître zen a remarqué que j'étais souvent préoccupé. Il me disait alors « Ne pensez pas, ne pensez pas ». Et il brisait le cours de mes pensées tourmentées avec un coup de canne sur les épaules.
「禅」という漢字からどのような意味をとおっしゃられれば、無駄のない美しさ、平和な心、それに尽きると思います。それだけの漢字ですが、無駄のない美しさ。ジャックさんが禅に求めていたことは、思いをとどめずに流していく、取り組んだものだと思います。おそらく深海に潜っていく、暗い闇の中に入っていく、何かにとらわれれば縛られてしまう、その心境を得られたならば、どこでも何でも自由でいられると。じいちゃんから聞いた話で、考えれば脳は酸素を使う、考えなければそれだけ長く水の中にいられる。
Going deep is a journey inside yourself. Mayol was the first to bring that element into freediving. People talk a lot about the silence of the depths. There's very little to hear underneath there, but it also silences the internal noise, the kind of mental chatter that we're constantly engaged in during our everyday lives. I think that's one of the most attractive and appealing aspects of freediving, is just to be able to exist in complete silence. It's like there's this connection between the breath and time, and that's suspended when you're holding your breath.
Notre berceau, c'est la mer. Et le ventre maternel n'est que son prolongement. Est-ce le poisson qui est devenu homme ou l'homme qui contenait en germe le poisson? L'homme qui descend dans les profondeurs en retenant son souffle et à l'image des mammifères marins.
人はやっぱりこういう社会を作る前にはもうちょっとピュアななんかイルカ的な生き物だったんじゃないかなって思ってると思うんですね。だからジャックはそういうふうに帰ってそのイルカ的な方向にイルカに会いに行ってイルカ的な方法に自分も行って自分はイルカ的に生きるっていうことをしたかったんじゃないかなと思うんですよね。だからそのジャックも自分は海に入ってそれでイルカと泳いでイルカ的な部分をもっとこう学んでで基本的には、ね、でもねやっぱりその人の社会とか人間っていうものをどっかそのジャックはちょっと斜に構えて見てたようなところがあってそのまあある時に環境の話を僕としてたんですけどもその時にジャックが僕に話したのはで本当は人間はいない方が自然にとってはいいんだ。
Bravo, voilà. On va nager. Viens, 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 Lolo. Viens, 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 Lolo. Viens, voilà, voilà, voilà. Bonjour, on nage. Je suis ta maman. Je t'apprends à nager. Je t'apprends à nager. Avec tes petites pattes palmées. Et tu palmes seulement avec les pattes de devant, hein. Tu ne sers pas les pattes de derrière pour nager. Fais-moi voir, fais-moi voir. Voilà, fais-moi voir. Voilà, les pattes de devant. Qu'est-ce que tu me racontes? Oh, quelle jolie histoire. Des histoires de poissons, bien sûr, des histoires de loups. On va aller nager ensemble, hein, tout à l'heure. Oui. Quoi? Viens, viens. Allez, va dans l'eau. Fais voir, petite patte. Voilà.
L'histoire commence comme ça. Nous étions en train de faire un film qui était basé sur mon contact avec les baleines. Bon, on est parti, on a fait un voyage où il y a les baleines à bosse. Et là, on a fait une dernière escale au Caicos. Quand le bateau est arrivé à quai, qui je vois sur le quai? Jacques Mayol. Donc quand il est revenu le lendemain, je lui ai dit, voilà, est-ce que tu as envie de voir des baleines? Mais il m'a dit, j'ai jamais vu les baleines encore. Je travaille avec les dauphins, mais pas avec les baleines. Les baleines à bosse sont des baleines qui chantent. Tous ces bruits provoquaient des vibrations dans l'eau. Et lui, il l'a plus ressenti parce qu'il est en apnée. Il est complètement en osmose avec le milieu. Il y a un moment assez intéressant et assez émouvant. À un moment donné, on a eu la chance d'avoir deux baleines qui étaient en train de faire la parade nuptiale, la parade d'amour, si vous voulez. Elles étaient en train de se tourner autour et d'émettre un tas de sons. Elles se parlaient, en fait. Hein. Et Jacques est descendu à ce moment-là, pris entre les deux monstres, on va dire, géants. Ce tout petit bonhomme perdu au milieu, là, très calme, très tranquille.
j'ai décidé d'atteindre cette profondeur, autrefois considérée comme impensable. J'étais convaincu que l'être humain était capable de plonger à 100 mètres de profondeur. Je me suis entouré d'une équipe de chercheurs, de médecins, de techniciens. Et je me suis soumis à une série d'expériences alors inédites, avec par exemple la première machine sous-marine à rayon X. Je me suis entraîné en haute altitude pour accroître mon taux de globules rouges, en alternant avec de longues périodes d'entraînement en mer et des apnées de plus en plus longues. Reste à découvrir quelle profondeur je peux atteindre.
E venne il direttore pubblicitario della Cressi, qui da me che ero in contatto perché avevo una scuola, e mi chiese insieme a questo signore con questo baffino che molto simpatico era, mi chiese se la sentivo di fare questo tipo di lavoro con loro per questi nuovi record, che poi vennero chiamati esperimenti applicati, insomma. Andai subito d'accordo con Jacques. Lui fu subito giusto, che mi disse, bene, facciamo, e cominciamo a lavorare.
Certamente lo yoga per Jacques è stato un aiuto, lui diceva, ma non solo lui, anche i ricercatori, tutti quanti, diceva che sott'acqua il 50% della sua resa era data dal fisico, dall'allenamento, ma il 50% era grazie allo yoga.
E secondo lui il punto zero non esiste dell'organismo umano. L'uomo può andare a qualsiasi profondità. Questa è una sua cosa sua. Lui voleva arrivare al punto massimo della profondità per dimostrare, e se facendo quello, anche se avesse perso la vita, era tranquillo, ragazzi, è il mio sogno.
Tanto era naturalmente un documento di tutto quello che succedeva, si facevano filmati e si facevano fotografie. E poi si distribuivano ai vari mezzi di informazione, soprattutto riviste, giornali. Per cui i media parlavano di lui, parlavano dei suoi esperimenti e quindi facevano di lui un personaggio.
Mr. Mayo, have you ever been afraid of death during your dive?
Well, first you have to understand what death is about to not be afraid of death. Of course, I've had sometimes problems, but I've never been really afraid of death during my dives. I have been afraid of technical failures or technical mistakes, but never of death itself.
Non è che facevamo i pastori noi, Noi facevamo tutta la stagione in acqua e poi al tempo che si faceva il record, e chiaramente eravamo ben allenati noi. Guarda, quando si fanno quelle discese lì, ci può essere sempre qualcosa che non è stato calcolato, l'incidente c'è sempre dietro l'angolo.
Je suis assis sur la plateforme. Mes palmes sont déjà sous l'eau. Ma poitrine est hors de l'eau pour ventiler mes poumons. Je ferme les yeux. Ma respiration se fait plus lente. Un grand calme intérieur m'envahit. Je suis prêt.
Et c'est un chercheur français, Jacques Mayol, qui vient de battre le record du monde à l'île d'Elbe. Il a plongé en apnée à moins 100 mètres.
Jacques Mayol, 49 ans. Chinois et japonais l'appellent le dauphin français. Le record du monde de plongée en apnée, c'est-à-dire sans l'aide d'appareil respiratoire.
Jacques Mayol, votre propre record du monde?
Eh bien, ça s'est passé il y a 10 jours. J'avais prédit, j'avais dit, l'homme atteindra 100 mètres. Et effectivement, nous avons atteint les 100 mètres.
Alors, 100 mètres, est-ce un plafond limite?
Je pense que non. Alors, combien de mètres en plus? Cette question, c'est un point d'interrogation.
Le 41e Festival du film de Cannes s'est ouvert au Grand Bleu. Le Grand Bleu, c'est le titre du 3e film de Luc Besson. D'après l'histoire de Jacques Mayol, un homme qui plonge à plus de 100 mètres en apnée, un film très attendu puisque jusqu'à présent, personne ne l'avait vu.
The film was inspired by what Jacques was trying to communicate. The spiritual side of what he was talking about is universal. The human being's relationship with the ocean and the sea is primordial. My first impression was, like all great characters of his generation, with the tinge of celebrity, a seducer, a showman. He had all those qualities, that craziness a little bit. And for him, it was great because he became even more known because of it.
Le Grand Bleu de Luc Besson est en train d'entrer par la grande porte dans l'histoire du cinéma français. Car à ce jour, 3,5 millions de spectateurs, après 20 semaines d'exploitation seulement. Et à ce niveau, ce n'est plus un film, mais un véritable phénomène de société.
Je pense que ça doit être la 5e fois que je vais le voir, là.
C'est la 5e fois que j'y vais, là.
C'est pourquoi?
C'est vraiment un très bon film.
Un véritable succès. 18e semaine, 400 000 entrées, surtout un film qui a été présenté pendant tout l'été, avec notre salle qui n'a pas des amplis, donc c'est vraiment un triomphe.
グランブルーの映画を僕は見て、なんか海の捉え方がすごい変わった感じがしました。海っていうのはやっぱりなんか僕その頃はもうちょっと物理的にここにある水だみたいな感じがしていて、でなんかそこでその内面的ないろんなことをこうなんていうかな探求できるような場っていうのを考えたことがなかったので。その世界っていうのはなんかすごく神秘的でもあって、日本の人は特にそういう神秘的なものとかなんかってすごく興味があって。
I was just a kid and I was so excited to be meeting Jacques Mayol, like, oh, wow, I was totally starstruck. And then I met him and I'm like, man, this guy is, he's a regular guy, but he's not. I had done both of my records by that point when I met him. Then I was deciding, am I going to continue doing records? It's right for some people. It was not right for me. And it was not right for Jacques. Jacques was not a huge supporter of the competitive side of freediving. Freediving is way more than that. It's a feeling. It's when you're underwater, it's almost like you can feel every drop of water that's touching your skin. And it totally takes you over. And at some point for me, the competitive element of that started to detract from it. Jacques was very influential in my relationship with the ocean. That leaves a lasting impression on you.
なんか二言目にはね、順次一番大事なものはな、家族とお前犬も飼ってるだろう、それから家もあるだろう、だからその家と家族と犬とな、そういうものが一番大事だからな。 本当に大事にしろよって。
晩年はやっぱりジャックさんは寂しかったんだと思いますね。まあ昔のようにあんまりこうファンもジャックさんジャックさんって言ってこなかったし、一人でいることが結構多い。で僕と一緒に泳ごうとか旅行行こうとかいろんなことを誘ってくれたんですけど、僕の方が仕事が忙しくてね。だから本当ここに座ると、ちょっとそういうことを思い出しちゃってちょっとねなんか喋りづらいですね。
Mon frérot, je suis sur une plage extraordinaire. Un vrai paradis comme ceux que tu as toujours recherchés. C'est la vie que j'ai choisie. Mais je ne suis pas heureux, car je n'ai pas trouvé mon paradis. Je n'ai pas trouvé l'île que mon subconscient a toujours cherchée. Je le ressens aujourd'hui plus que jamais. Je suis fatigué, là. Je rentre à l'île d'Elbe pour tenter de me reposer.
He brought us to Elba, and we were there like 4 or 5 days with him. It was sad. Yeah, I didn't realize how bad it was. Nobody had told me that he was suffering from depression or whatever it was. I'm not even sure that it was depression. I asked him, I said, you're not blind, you're not in a wheelchair. Why do you want to quit life? And he said, well, I have my reasons, so he wouldn't tell us. And he'd hoped to have a second family, that he told me. At some point in his life, he had hoped to have a second family, another wife and children. So he was a family man. And then he found himself alone.
Jacques Mayol a décidé de rejoindre le Grand Bleu définitivement. Le célèbre plongeur s'est suicidé en Italie, chez lui, sur l'île d'Elbe, à l'âge de 74 ans. Sa vie et ses records en apnée avaient inspiré le célèbre film de Luc Besson.
La logica per cui una persona commette un suicidio è perché non ha più niente da dare, sì, che era il numero uno e non lo era più. Non ha scritto perché, non ha scritto nulla. Ha salutato. Me ne vado in un altro mondo, perché quello era il saluto. Forse un mondo in cui credeva che era meglio di questo.
要するにその死生観みたいなものではよく話し合いました。でやっぱり日本はね、自死っていうのはジャックの死には侍的な精神があったかっていう、僕はあったと思ってます。
The one time he told me, when old dolphins, they feel it's time to die, they separate from the group. They go to die alone. And I think that's what he did.
Well, if I were to just close my eyes and think of Jacques, I'd just feel good. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about him.
Jacques opened my eyes to
the greater aspects of the ocean and man's relationship with the ocean, and what we take and what we get back. We really do have a big problem out there in our oceans, and it's people like Jacques that through his legacy of breath hold diving brought people into that environment and in a more pure way than scuba diving and all the technical aspects, but just to be at one with the ocean.
Hey, you see that right there? It looks like a rock. What? Wait. That's a little crab. Okay, let's see if we can get him to come out and say hi. I think as a people, as a society, we've gotten so far away from nature. I feel like you get on that treadmill and you're just going and you have this to do and you have this to do and you're dealing with technology, and then I stop and I take a step back and I realize that I'm having a huge nature deficit. I feel like, especially with our kids, that we have this opportunity to find that equilibrium, to seek out that nature and bring that back into our lives and our society. Now, what do you see right here? Turtle grass. That's right. This one's called turtle grass. And do you remember what lives in the turtle grass? Turtles. The more that I can teach my kids about the ocean and all that lives there, the more they'll understand it, they'll have no reason to fear it, and that they'll want to take care of it. You gonna run?
やっぱ人はそういう命っていうのをもっとちゃんと見て、本当にこう全部スピリットがあって何か役目があって生きていて、それをちゃんと見ながらこう暮らしていかなくちゃいけないし、人には2つ役目があるって。で1つはその愛を学ぶことが人の役目であると。でもう1つは自然がちゃんとバランスをとっていけるように、いろんな生き物とか植物とかがバランスをとっていけるように人は見る役目があるんだと。でそれはすごく共感しましたし、ちゃんとそのことを僕が聞いたから人に伝えなくちゃと思って、それでなんかすごい人間の悲しさとかね、そのジャックの死によって感じて、なんかジャックが言ってくれたその大事にする必要のある最大のものっていうのをやっぱり大事にしなくちゃって。
L'homme qui deviendra Homo delphinus aura compris qu'il n'est pas séparé de la nature ou de la mer. Il saura que du microbe à la baleine, il n'existe pas d'être inférieur ou supérieur. Tout est lié. Je ne vois pas la mer comme une frontière à conquérir, un nouveau territoire à exploiter. Je la vois comme l'élément premier. Je suis la mer.